I'm 27 years old, and my name is Rose. I want to treat myself this year after working non-stop to pay for everything in the house, including my younger sister's college tuition, rent, groceries, internet, and phone bill. I assumed responsibility for everything after our parents passed away, but no one ever expressed gratitude. Nevertheless, I reasoned that perhaps my birthday could be a little respite from everything, so I saved some cash and ordered a cake, arranged some basic decorations, and cleaned the apartment. I donned a new dress I got on sale, and I invited a few friends, nothing fancy, just individuals who made me feel recognized and valued. You deserve this, Rose, I said in a whisper as I stood in front of the mirror, grinning at myself. Then Rachel entered. My 22-year-old younger sister is the type of person that craves attention even when it's not her moment, and she is always noisy and the focus of attention. As soon as she saw, her entire mood changed when she saw the cake and the happy guests. Seriously, you threw a party for yourself? That's sad, she added with a wicked smile as she surveyed the room. She approached a table and slammed her fist into the cake, destroying it completely before I could respond. The room erupted in gasps, and I stood motionless, my heart pounding. There was silence in the room. A few of my pals turned their heads away, while others gaped at Rachel in shock. She wasn't finished, she exclaimed loudly as she turned to face everyone. Avoid being duped. Despite being broke and uninteresting, she presents herself as giving, always acting like a character. I had paid for everything in her life, including her education, books, clothes, and coffee, so that moment seemed like a kick to the stomach. She even had the audacity to label me cheap. My eyes began to well up with tears, but I forced myself to hold back. I simply stared at her, and something inside of me hardened. I thought everything would change. Rest that evening, I stayed in the living room by myself, staring at the ruined cake after the guests had quietly left, some texting apologies and others simply disappearing without saying anything. The candles I never managed to blow out were broken and crooked, and the icing spilled all over the table. Once reassuring, the scent of vanilla now made my stomach turn. Rachel closed her bedroom door as if she were the victim, and I cleaned everything in quiet. No one offered to help, and I didn't even expect an apology from her. But for a brief while, I hoped she might say something. But she didn't. As if nothing had happened, her music reverberated loudly and carelessly through the wall. I entered my room at around 2 a.m., opened my laptop, and retrieved all of my bills, tuition, groceries, water, electricity, and more. Rent for her college room from the previous semester. I realized that I was more than simply her sister. I was also her safety net, her source of income, and her justification for being irresponsible. Additionally, the even worse, she showed me no respect. Not enough. Not even enough to allow me to have a quiet birthday. I grabbed my phone and texted her. You're going to be paying bills starting next week. After a minute of staring at the screen, I clicked send. No more sacrifices made in silence. Being taken for granted is over. She could see what life would be like without me if she wanted to treat me like I didn't exist. After packing a few things and grabbing my luggage, I departed from the flat that evening. I simply left without yelling, slamming the door, or even crying. I spent a few days with my friend Alyssa, who lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment downtown, with just enough room for 2 people, and I had no idea what sort of storm I had just unleashed. Despite this, she accepted me without hesitation. You've been keeping that house together for years, Rose, and I'm honestly surprised it took you this long to walk, she replied, shaking her head when I explained what had transpired. Away. Hearing that made me wonder if I was the only one who was crazy for finally saying no. I slept for the first time in years without worrying about Rachel's issues or my debts. I didn't have to make supper for someone who never expressed gratitude, and I didn't wake up to her yelling about her missing cosmetics or griping about the poor Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, Fishers quickly appeared back at the flat. On the 3rd day, the energy provider called to let me know that Rachel hadn't paid something. I instructed them to delete my name from the account, and I followed through on the lease, water, internet, and other services as well. On the 5th day, Her university sent a notification. Her enrollment would be suspended if she didn't pay the past due tuition for the next semester. That evening, she texted me at last. What's causing this house to collapse? I can't use the internet, and my school says I have debt. Would you please simply repair it? I was astounded as I looked at her message. No regrets, no comprehension, just demands I answer in a single sentence. You called me cheap and shattered the cake. Deal with the actual expense now. After that, she didn't text again. Our parents, who live a few hours away, called a few days later. They had always assumed that Rachel and I were handling things, so I hadn't told them yet. But Rachel did, but she twisted the tale, saying, "You left without warning and ruined her life." Mom was obviously stressed when she spoke on the phone, so I took a deep breath. Mom, I've been covering her education, rent, food, and other expenses. She ruined my cake and called me cheap at my birthday celebration, humiliating me in front of my friends. I pay for silence in the apartment. Then Mom whispered, "Is that true?" I sent her an email with all of the receipts, bank statements, payments, and tuition confirmations that Rachel had never mentioned. That evening, I received another call, this time from my father. He sounded irate, but not at me. "She misled us. Rose, you've been carrying her the entire time, even though she made it seem like you abandoned her." I just said, "I know." That's when I came to a realization. At last, the truth was revealed. But what happened next was even more startling. I received an invitation to a family lunch about 2 weeks later. My parents indicated they wanted to discuss matters further, and Rachel would also be attending. I didn't trust her at first, so I didn't want to go. But I needed closure, or at least the opportunity to express all I had persisted for years. So I went. Rachel was already seated at the table, arms crossed, acting as though nothing had happened. I sat down across from her, and my dad cleared his throat. The lunch was at my parents' house, and when I walked in, I noticed that they had set the table nicely, as if they were trying to create a calm environment. But the air was heavy with tension. "We must put everything out in the open before we eat." Rachel looked up, her eyes icy. "Why does everyone believe the issue is me? You always side with her just because she departed and caused a commotion." My parents looked at me, and I said, "This is everything I paid for over the last 3 years. Rent, college fees, her phone bill, groceries, even the decorations and cake she destroyed at my birthday." I took out a small folder I had brought and calmly placed it on the table. Inside were printed copies of my utility bills, tuition receipts, and bank transfers, all in my name. My mom's hands were trembling a little when she took up one of the papers. As he flipped through the remainder, Rachel's fox serenity broke, and she began to fidget in her seat. Dad's jaw tightened. Dad glared at Rachel and said, "You paid your half. You told us she was selfish. But all this time you were living off her." Rachel abruptly got to her feet. "Come on. She's meant to help because she's older. Isn't that what families do?" I got up. "In front of your friends, your family doesn't ruin your cake and label you cheap. They also don't lie and then demand more money as if nothing had happened." "You're so dramatic." But my parents weren't buying it anymore, she mumbled, rolling her eyes. "That's enough, Mom," she stated firmly, her voice trembling with sadness. "You should apologize to your sister. Additionally, the money." Without saying another word, Rachel raced out of the room, and instead of following her, my dad put his hand on my shoulder and muttered, "I apologize, Rose. We should have paid closer attention since we didn't realize how much you were doing." It wasn't all I wanted to hear, but it was something. I thought for the first time that someone had finally realized the truth. Everything in our family altered on that day, but Rachel's decline was just getting started. After the truth was revealed over the family meal, Rachel's world quickly fell apart. My parents informed her she had a month to start and cease providing coverage for her. Assuming accountability or leaving their house, she made an effort to appear indifferent, but it was clear that she wasn't accustomed to hearing the word no. Her university sent her another email a few days later, this time with the last warning: either settle the outstanding balance or be formally dismissed from her classes. She had no work, no savings, and her friends, who had earlier commended her confidence, began to turn against her after learning what she had done to me. When others learn that you made fun of your sister, word gets around quickly. Birthday, she made another attempt to text me. She sent a fake payment receipt to the university in the hopes that they would believe it long enough for her to remain enrolled, but the school verified it and expelled her after realizing it was a fake. I know I was a little harsh, but I'm under pressure too. Could you please help me? Just this one time I didn't respond. My dad told me over the phone that the news was devastating to my parents. Once more, she lied. Rose may have been suspended forever. She is now accusing us all. As I was at last regaining control over my own life, I was able to get a better job that paid more than just bills. I signed the lease for my own tiny flat, which wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, and it gave me a breath of fresh air. Quiet. Without shouting or slamming doors, just when I thought the drama was done, Rachel showed up at my apartment door. I had started making time for myself, reading, going out with real friends, and even taking a weekend cooking class I had always wanted to take. One night she had swollen eyes. Her attire was unkempt. I don't have anywhere to go, she continued. Please, just for a little while. She hadn't come to yell but to apologize. I gazed at her. The same sister who made fun of me wrecked my birthday and never expressed regret. Now that she was in front of me, pleading for assistance, I inhaled deeply and said, Rachel, before labeling me cheap, I wish you had given some consideration. She stared down in silence before taking advantage of me and betraying my confidence. Continuing, I said, I won't be your safety net anymore. If you want help, you need to start over on your own. I gave her a list of local employment positions and women's housing shelters that might be able to assist. She simply took the paper and left without saying thank you or sorry. I hadn't seen her for months after that. Months went by. The guilt, anxiety, and quiet that had been bearing down on me for years were finally lifted. It wasn't until I began to wake up without that heaviness in my chest that I realized how profoundly it had affected me. I was no longer simply surviving. I was living, and I furnished my tiny flat how I wanted. Gentle hues, peaceful plants beside the window. I even purchased a used piano, something I had wanted since I was a child but never had the funds or time to acquire. And I have books piled next to my bed. I used to sit by the window and listen to the music in the evenings after work. Remove the agony. When I opened my email one day, I discovered an unexpected invitation to speak at a local nonprofits event for young women's empowerment. My experience of standing up for myself, ending the cycle, and finding freedom was shared with one of the organizers by a friend. I was not accustomed to standing on a stage, so I was hesitant at first, but something inside of me said, You've been quiet long enough. So I said yes. On the evening of the occasion, I was in front of a group of young ladies. Some mothers are still in their teens, while others are fighting silent fights. When I told them my tale of being used, humiliated, and branded cheap, I added, Sometimes, love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go, especially when the person you love doesn't respect your worth. Although it was quiet, the room wasn't deserted. In a throng, people gave me hugs when I left the stage. Some people sobbed. In a whisper, one woman said, I thought I was alone. I continued talking after that and joined a nonprofit that mentors females who have experienced emotional or financial abuse. I was Rose, the survivor who blossomed again, not just Rose, the sister who paid the bills. In the end, Rachel secured a part-time position at a clothes store on the other side of town. I didn't ask for specifics, but my mother informed me she was attempting to acquire her GED following her expulsion. Unwillingness to follow up with someone who had been a doormat to me for years, I once got a letter in the mail with a brief note written in unsteady handwriting and no return address. I don't expect forgiveness, but now that I've ruined everything, I know that you didn't deserve it. I appreciate you showing me what true strength looks like, Rachel. I read it once, then carefully folded it and placed it in a drawer because, although I didn't want to respond, it was the first time in her life that she had been honest, and I had already begun a new life, so I didn't need her apology to move on. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below if this story touched you. Because I post new, impactful stories every week, please subscribe and enable notifications. Your help is greatly appreciated, and I'm excited to share the following chapter with you.